long it had been since we'd been here in this building, and I'm thinking 3 or 4 years. We pulled a float for you all in a 4th of July parade one year. That may be the last time.
Well, I did Bible school.
And you helped with Bible school. Anyway, we're glad to be here. Well, the other day, Diane and I were in the car and we stopped at a light behind a compact SUV. And it had a very highly decorated window. In the top corners were American flags. A little different design, but 2 American flags in the top corners. In one corner, bottom corner, was a plain cross. And in the other bottom corner was one of those Christian fish symbols with a cross. And then somewhere toward the center was a very bright sticker that proclaimed, "I love my cat." And then the light changed, and I was really frustrated because I wanted to talk to that person about their window. I wanted to go up and see if I could rap on the window without scaring them. And say, "Hi, I can't help noticing your window. I love it. But I have a question." "Well, your window tells me that you love Jesus and the USA and your cat. I'm very curious. If you had to choose just one of those things you love, which would it be?" Let's see. We're in church, so we know the correct answer is, which is what? Jesus. Yeah, when you're doing children's stories, the kids, you can ask them a question about anything, and most of them know the correct answer is Jesus. Well, yeah, it might be Jesus, because we're in church. But it's not always that simple, is it? In the real world, patriotic holidays kind of blur the boundaries a little bit, don't they? And God and country get mixed up sometimes. Pay attention to that this week as we celebrate. And then there's the cat. A lot of us have a pretty significant relational investment in our dogs or cats. Just ask Rufus the Wonder Dog, who lives at our house. Do you know the difference between a dog and a cat? This is a theological question. Dogs know, dogs think, dogs know that we're God. Rufus knows that I'm God because I walk him and I feed him and all that good stuff. Cats know they're God. Yeah. That's a pretty popular trinity for us. We love God, we love our country, we love our pets. Pets are big business these days, aren't they? Yeah. And we can go on from there. We love our family and friends and neighbors. We love our boats and jeeps and RVs and other assorted toys. We love a full life where we're doing lots of things and we have lots of friends and we don't have a lot of downtime. All that activity fills up our life, but it doesn't fill our emptiness all the time. And sometimes we start to wonder what we're missing. We're doing a lot of things, but are we doing the main thing? Because after all, whoever said it was really right. The main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. Now, next time you feel that coming, you can join in. Because it will. Losing track of the main thing happens to church folks a lot. There's a theory of church administration that infects us sometimes. It's not a very good theory. If you keep folks busy and active and kind of locked into the church, somewhere in there, we got to be doing God's work. Some of all that activity has got to be meaningful and productive. Trouble is, we're not sure which part. And sometimes we find ourselves rushing off madly in all directions at once without any idea where we're going. Happens to every church somewhere along the way. Probably doesn't feel much like that on the last Sunday in June, does it? As you welcome a new pastor, you're presented with a God-given opportunity to push the pause button. It's going to be lots of feeling like, we've got to be doing some stuff now with the new guy. Push the pause button. Take a moment to reflect together on your main thing. What is the main thing that Jesus taught all of us? And how does it express itself in this unique context where you all serve and do ministry? What's our main thing? Have some great conversations about that. Expect your learning curve to be steep as you're getting acquainted with the other Pastor Michael. The real one, the permanent one. I expect that he'll be nosing around and asking lots of good questions. Questions you thought you knew the answers to, questions that were subtle, but lots of good questions. Why do we do this? How does this work? Those kinds of things. And you'll have a lot of curiosity about him. How does he think? How does he work? What sort of worship style does he have? What does he do when we can't see him on his day off? What does he do for fun? Take your time, and as that process happens, change of pastors is a time when the Spirit works in a congregation. And our job as members of that congregation is to be open and alert and not foot draggers. Take your time as you share that time together, and let the Spirit help sharpen up your understanding of the main thing. Because after all, the main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. I'm going to try that once more, and I think you'll have it. The main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. Okay, good. In the story we read, Jesus has been teaching his disciples the main thing from day one. And if you look a little earlier in that chapter, you'll discover that recently he'd had the talk with them again. Not the birds and bees talk, the discipleship talk. If any want to become my followers, Jesus says, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. Now, as our story opened, we're told that he steeled himself for the journey to Jerusalem. Other translations say something like he set his face toward Jerusalem. Something has changed, and he's headed now, he knows he's headed now for that great climactic moment. So he and his disciples set off for Jerusalem. And they're somewhere up in North Palestine. And Jerusalem, you may know, is toward the south. And they're just on the edge of Samaria. And they don't go the way that all good Jewish people routinely go, because they would have to go through the province of Samaria. And the Jews and Samaritans, you remember, didn't like each other. On a good day when they were feeling kind toward each other, they didn't like each other. Most of the time, they were bitter religious enemies. And they had been for a few centuries, and a lot of them couldn't remember why, but they hated each other anyway. You know, sometimes you just get that gut feeling. It just feels good to be mad at somebody. Anyway, they just didn't like each other. And Samaria kind of sat here, and Palestine kind of curved around it. And you could get to Jerusalem a lot quicker by going straight. But you had to spend a few days in the presence of Samaritans and maybe ask them for a room or a meal or something like that. So most Jewish people who made that journey went the long way around. They took that detour even though it cost them a few days. Jesus says, no, we're taking the direct route. So they did. At the end of the first day, they were near a village, and he sent a couple of disciples into the village to inquire about their hospitality. Hospitality is a huge tradition in the Middle East, in those desert countries. Because when you need a little shelter, a little water, a night's rest, you really need it in that brutal desert. So they went in and they asked around, and they let somebody know that, yeah, we're on our way to Jerusalem. And the door is slammed shut. Their welcome evaporated. And there was no room for Jesus and his disciples in any inn in that village. And the guys who had been sent into town went back and told Jesus and the rest what had happened. And James and John just hit the roof. They were as mad as fishermen, which is what they were. And you heard them. You want us to call down fire on the Lord? We'll incinerate it. The whole village will be toast. And Jesus said, no, that's not what we do. That's not who we are. Hold your fire, boys. God has called us together to be the prototype of the new world God wants to build among us, among the Jewish people, among all people. To be a prototype of a world where God's embracing love pulls us all together in one great family. A world where God's embracing love pulls us into a community that has room for both sour Samaritans and petty Palestinians. A world where us and them find their way to the same table. A world where one day there will be no us and them because we're all us. There's no them in God's family. Because God loves all that God has created. And as you may have heard somewhere, all means all. That, according to Jesus, is the main thing. And the main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. And you're doing so well with that we're going to go to version 2.0. Version 2.0 says the main thing is keeping God's main thing, our main thing, Let's do that. The main thing is keeping God's main thing our main thing. All right. Now, Jesus and his friends moved on the next day from wherever they had slept. And as they made their way toward Jerusalem in the coming days, the buzz about Jesus of Nazareth and his friends followed them. And you know the way gossip works sometimes. Sometimes it kind of trails along behind the celebrities. And sometimes it gets to the next village before they do. And so as Jesus and his friends went along, wannabe disciples would approach them as they approached the village. So one man came up and he said, "I'll follow you, Jesus, wherever." Guy looked like he probably enjoyed traveling and staying in nice places. Well, Jesus said, he was probably thinking, yeah, this guy might be able to handle a 3-star hotel or maybe a 2-star on a really good day if he's with me. But Jesus said, "Friend, the only where I have is nowhere." Can you handle that? As they walked along, sometimes folks would come up to them and they'd be very excited. "Yes, Lord, I'm ready to follow you. Let's go. I'm all packed. But first, excuse me. I'm ready to go." As soon as I arranged my father's burial. Now, we don't know whether he just died or whether he was going to die sometime in the next few decades. If he was the oldest son, that was his duty. Somebody else came running up and said, "Lord, I'll follow you, but first excuse me to settle my affairs at home." Well, home's going to go on for the next however long, whether you're there or not, bud. Meanwhile, we have a kingdom to proclaim. We have good news to share. First things first, no procrastination, no backward looks. You can't put God's kingdom off. Seize the day. God's call is urgent, immediate, inescapable. Follow me, because your brothers and sisters are hurting now. They need good news now. They're broken. They're wounded. They live in deep darkness. And God has given us gifts of love and mercy and caring. And you know what's true about God's gifts? Any of you know Bill Eason? Well, he's a pretty bright guy. Bill Eason says God's gifts always come to us on their way to someone else. So Jesus calls us to follow him and share this good news. And he's given us the gifts on their way to someone else. To the hurting, broken, depressed, struggling folks within our reach. Sometimes following Jesus dislocates things. Will Willimon used to be the dean of the chapel at Duke University. He was like the senior pastor for that whole university community. And sometimes parents would call him with issues about their kids. And he says one of the common calls he got went something like this: "What did you do to our daughter out there at Duke? She went there to become a research scientist, and now she says she's going to become a medical missionary in Haiti." Haiti! You ruined her life. something that helped her begin to find her life. Wellman worked with those parents and helped them come to see, in many cases, that their child had made a life-changing decision and it was the best thing that could have happened to them. Their daughter had lost her life in order to find it. She was in the grip of that divine urgency to heal those who are desperately hurting, who need help and hope, something to hold on to, someone to care for them. When that divine urgency gets hold of us, it doesn't matter whether those folks are next door or halfway around the world. First things first. No procrastination, no backward looks. You can't put God's kingdom off. Because the hurting folks within our reach don't want to take a number. They don't want to stand in line for a few days. They need that love desperately to live. Our crucified, risen Lord calls us to follow him wherever. Diane and I go to that restaurant every once in a while. We're going out and we're not sure where we were headed when we started out. And I say, where do you want to go? Wherever. And I say, but we were there last week. Wherever is not a destination, not a place with GPS coordinates. Wherever is the journey we take with our crucified, risen, ascended Lord. Wherever is the journey to Jerusalem, or Boulder City, or Saipan, as I'm doing in September. Wherever is the journey with our risen Lord and with all who follow Jesus toward the fulfillment of God's purposes in us, in all within our reach, in all of creation. God is building a whole new creation, and we're invited to be a part of that. But come along. No procrastination. No excuses. First things first. But first discipleship is a dead end. God's Spirit sets us free to surrender our excuses, our inadequacy, our I can'ts, I won'ts, I don't want's. God's Spirit releases our death grip on the way we've always done it. And all along the way, God's powerful, gentle love is forming us into family, helping us to see the image of God in one another. In the folks where it's been terribly scarred and defaced and all but erased. And in them, whom we just can't imagine ever being welcomed into God's kingdom. What do you label them? Republicans, Democrats, Baptists. What do you label them? God's powerful love is forming us into a family where we're all us and there's no them. As you and Pastor Michael begin your ministry together, Expect to be amazed at who and how many you reach as you share God's life-giving, death-destroying love. Starting now. No procrastination, no backward looks, no, but first, excuse me. Because the main thing is keeping God's main thing our main thing. Let's pray together.